All right. Well, I guess we ought to get into some more news involving one of our favorite members of the AEW roster. I was watching, or not watching, but looking through Twitter and saw some comments about this. But I believe you have found the clip that's germane to this incident. I am not a regular listener of Chris Jericho's podcast. I'm sure he has some. I'm just not one of them.
Who could be? Oof.
Well, it would probably be burdensome, but somebody's got to do it. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. But in this case, it got a little interesting because, we've seen Jericho. I think he's one of these people who just likes to have his picture taken with famous people, regardless of their ilk. He's had pictures with Donald Trump Jr. I think he was on the program one time. I think he was a big fan of one of the other right-wing lunatic rock stars like Ted Nugent or Kid Rock, one of those type of people. But he's had the other side of the coin on, a guy who didn't necessarily say some things that Chris Jericho might have wanted to hear recently. Old Governor Jesse Ventura, who's always been a different kind of fellow, and has his beliefs and doesn't mind mentioning them in public forums. And apparently, old Jericho got blistered by Jesse. Well, he wasn't blistering Jericho. He was blistering former President Pig shit, and Jericho had to sit there and listen to the truth for once. And I'm pretty sure that didn't fall very well with him, since his wife was vacationing in D.C. to celebrate the insurrection and attempted overthrow of our government, and he himself contributed money to a fucking criminal psychopath that tried to, again, overthrow democracy. And Jesse, apparently, from what I have heard, told Chris Jericho what he thought of the whole matter on Jericho's own show, and Chris sat there and nodded a lot. Have I summarized this appropriately here?
I believe so. We'll play a little bit of audio so you can actually review it and hear the real thing as opposed to whatever you're reading. But it's interesting to note that Jesse Ventura, I believe, and Chris Jericho share the same agent. I mean, Jesse was the one who brought Barry Bloom into wrestling, and Barry Bloom is Jericho's agent, correct?
Well, I haven't checked with him recently. I think at one time that was the case. And Barry Bloom, actually, like you said, Jesse brought him into wrestling at various points, was the guy who, over the past 25 years, who's represented, I would say, 80 or 90% of the major names getting major contracts in wrestling, or at least he did at one time. Especially, I know when Jim Ross was the head of talent relations for the WWF, he didn't look forward to speaking to Barry Bloom about a number of subjects. And when JR left that position, Barry Bloom became JR's agent. So he must be good.
Let's now go. Here's a little bit of audio. Again, Chris Jericho speaking with the former governor of Minnesota, not just someone who's into politics, a former elected official, Jesse Ventura, on his little podcast.
It's like right now, Chris. Do you know why I hate the Republican Party right now? And I'll say it blatantly on the air with you, why I hate them.
Why?
Because I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And on January 6th, the Republicans attacked my Capitol against the Constitution, and I saw a Confederate flag get carried through my Capitol with their blessing. And no one, and I mean no one, to this day from the Republican Party has apologized for it. All I want's an apology. I want the Republican Party to tell Governor Jesse Ventura they are apologizing and are sorry that a Confederate flag got carried through his national capital.
Right.
I don't think that's too much to ask, but I don't think it'll ever be done, Chris. I'd hate to admit something, but I'll try to word this as best I can. If I would have been security that day, the dude with the flag, I often wonder if he'd be breathing today.
Mm-hmm.
Get my message?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of ingredients to fix or build a car.
That's how he inserts his hands, the fucking dick. Listen, that's hysterical. because that was the perfect opportunity for Jericho to say, listen, my wife was there, and I want to speak up for those people. He said nothing.
Oh, well, remember all the people that were saying, well, I was there. It was just a tourist visit, just a protest, just everybody normally going about their business. It was fucking chaos. We've seen the video. There was your point, Chris. There was your time. You could have told Governor Jesse Ventura, who may not have been the greatest elected politician in the world, but he's been one, so he has more experience at it than you. He knows how this shit works. There was your time to say, no, it's all been misunderstood. There were voting irregularities. There was fraud committed. People were outraged. No, you sat there like a little bitch with your tail tucked between your legs when you heard the truth, just like every other Republican is doing right now, that they're hearing the truth from the people that were there in the January 6th commission, under oath. Republicans, people that Trump appointed alike, saying he was unhinged, saying that he was a criminal, saying that he was trying to overthrow the government by illegal means. It's all been outed. And Chris, you had the chance and you couldn't say anything because you know why? Because there's nothing to say. But he could have called home and had his wife called and apologized to Jesse Ventura for being there when she put up her vacation pictures on Facebook. Here we are trying to help a fucking criminal psychopath overthrow the government. And we're all blonde.
Jesse Ventura never met a conspiracy theory he didn't like. And when he hears all this, like, that's nuts. He lost the election.
When it's too much for him. Anyway, so we'll keep an eye on, and maybe they can book that in AEW. Jericho versus Ventura. It would have name value.
Oh, Barry Bloom would love to negotiate with Tony again.
I'm sure he would. I would imagine that Tony, every time Barry Bloom sits down with Tony Khan, Barry has to bring an extra Brinks truck or two to carry off all the extra money, because that would literally be Einstein teaching a second grade math class.
I'd pay money right now to hear Ventura talk with Linda McMahon. I'd pay money to sit there and listen to it.